No one even asked her name. They just looked at her shoes, her off-the-rack purse, her modest scarf that did not shimmer like everyone else's couture, and they laughed, not cruelly, not loudly, but with the kind of refined mockery that hides behind champagne and perfect teeth. At the heart of Fashion Week's velvet rope elite, Olivia stood quietly in the reception queue, her digital invite pulled up on her phone, clutching it like proof of her worth. It was not a printing error. It was not a gate crash. She belonged there, or so she thought. But the glances said otherwise. She must be a blogger from a budget brand, one stylist whispered. No way she's here for the showcase, another chuckled. Maybe housekeeping? It stung. Not because their words were sharp, but because they felt rehearsed, like the world already had a script for women like her. Too quiet, too plain, too soft-spoken to be anyone important. But what no one knew was this. The man about to walk through the side entrance, the one they had not even recognized on the guest list, was Olivia's husband, and his presence would flip the entire runway upside down. Because the real power at Fashion Week, it was not the designers, it was not the influencers, it was the silent investor who built the venue, funded the show, and happened to love a woman the fashion world refused to see. Olivia adjusted the neckline of her cream-colored blouse as she waited near the grand entry of the venue. It was a soft chiffon number, well-fitted, elegant, timeless. But it had no logo, no blinding embellishments, no oversized shoulder pads or dramatic silhouettes, just like her. She looked around at the swirling colors and sounds of Fashion Week, the flash of cameras, the rhythmic clicks of designer heels across marble floors, the air rich with expensive perfume and louder egos. To everyone else, this was a spectacle. To Olivia, it was supposed to be a celebration, not for herself, but for the foundation her husband had spent years building quietly, one that funded underrepresented designers, many of whom were showcasing tonight. Her husband Rehan had poured resources, trust, and vision into this initiative, and it was Olivia who had first introduced him to that world. Years ago, she had studied fashion merchandising at a community college. She loved fabrics, color psychology, ethical sourcing, but instead of chasing the industry, she chose to build a life rooted in privacy, simplicity, and meaningful impact. She stayed behind the scenes. Even when Rehan started investing in fashion ventures, Olivia never demanded attention. She preferred watching his efforts grow from the back row. But tonight, for the first time, he had insisted she come to the opening runway. "You're part of this," he had told her that morning, brushing a curl away from her cheek. "You helped me see what real fashion can be. It's time they see you too." He had gone ahead earlier to manage last-minute logistics, leaving her with a digital VIP pass and a driver. "I'll meet you just before the first showcase," he promised. So she arrived, alone, and almost immediately, she knew something was off. When she approached the reception table, the event assistant barely looked up. She wore a headset and a bored expression, clicking her stylus against a tablet screen. Her lanyard read, "Backstage Coordinator," though her posture screamed gatekeeper. "Yes," she said, flatly, eyes scanning Olivia's face. "I'm here for the Heritage Capsule Showcase," Olivia replied. "My name is Olivia Mirza." The assistant blinked. "Do you have a printed invite?" "I have a QR code," Olivia said, holding up her phone. The assistant gave a tight smile, the kind that said, "How quaint." She scanned the code, paused, and tilted her head. She said, dragging the word like an accessory. "Your name's not in the immediate guest list. Maybe you were added late?" Olivia remained calm. "I was told this was the correct entrance for the VIP reception." "I see." The assistant tapped the screen again, her tone edging into performative sympathy. "Well, the lounge is very exclusive tonight. Lots of press, sponsors, and top-tier influencers. Maybe try general admission?" Before Olivia could speak, a group of glossy-haired women swept past, laughing. Their wrists shimmered with laminated VIP bracelets. "Oh, she's cute," one of them whispered, "like an off-duty librarian." Another replied, "Probably someone's PR intern, definitely not couture." The words stung, not because they were accurate, but because they were designed to exclude. Still, Olivia stayed poised. She had faced worse. She had learned long ago that silence could be stronger than retorts. "May I wait here until my husband arrives?" she asked the assistant softly. "I suppose," the woman replied, already shifting her attention to the next group. "But please keep the area clear." Olivia stepped aside. As she leaned against the marble column, she couldn't help but notice how the room buzzed around her, an ecosystem of ego, labels, and shallow validation. No one questioned why someone was there. They only questioned what she wore. She watched a woman draped in an avant-garde tulle cape nearly trip over it. No one blinked. A man wore mismatched Crocs with a tuxedo. People called it brilliant, but Olivia's simple elegance? That was suspicious. She looked at her reflection in a nearby mirrored panel. She did not regret her outfit. She regretted their assumptions. From a nearby alcove, she overheard a cluster of designers discussing the guest list. "Too many nobodies this year," one complained. "It's a runway, not a reunion. Tell me about..." Loudly labeled. The longer Olivia waited, the colder the atmosphere became. Not physically. The room was warm from the packed bodies and overhead lights, but emotionally. She felt like a coat someone had forgotten to hang up, present but unclaimed. A photographer walked by, pointing his lens toward the glowing models arriving in shimmering metallics and bold plumage. When he passed Olivia, he dropped his camera slightly and kept walking. A boutique brand manager approached the check-in desk and casually leaned over, pointing to a designer who had just entered. "She's wearing our autumn line," she said. "Get her front row placement." The event assistant nodded and added the name with a flourish. Olivia wondered if anyone had looked at her QR code since she first arrived. Still, she waited. Her phone buzzed, a message from Rehan. "Running a few minutes late. They're fixing a lighting issue backstage. Stay where you are." She typed a reply. "Already erased from the guest list, but I'm okay." No sooner had she hit send than two men in matching black suits approached her. Their expressions were stiff, professional, distant. "Ma'am," the taller one said, "we've been asked to clear the reception area. Only verified guests may remain." "I was invited," Olivia said quietly. "I'm waiting for my husband." They exchanged a glance. "With respect, this zone is for guests with approved passes. If your husband is arriving, he can accompany you once inside. Until then, we'll need you to step outside the entry corridor." The request wasn't aggressive, but it was definitive. A line drawn gently, yet firmly, around her. Other guests looked over. A few whispers floated up again, low but lethal. Poor thing. Lost? She must be someone's +1 who got the invite by accident. Or a brand intern trying to sneak in for TikTok content. Olivia smiled faintly. She had once built entire lookbooks for a fashion startup from her kitchen table. Unpaid, invisible, and brilliant. She had reviewed portfolios, predicted trends before they hit, and even hand-stitched sample pieces during a vendor's strike. But none of that mattered here, because in this room visibility was purchased, not earned. And Olivia, despite being one of the reasons Fashion Week even existed this year, was not wearing enough to be noticed. As she stepped to the side, out of the reception area and into the hallway near the coat check, she caught her reflection again. She did not look poor. She did not look desperate. She looked out of place, and that was the real offense. Suddenly, she heard the click of approaching heels, fast, purposeful, expensive. A woman appeared, draped in a sculptural red dress that demanded attention. Her platinum hair was styled in sleek waves, and her voice carried with the confidence of someone used to owning space. "Is there a problem?" "Escorting a guest out," she interrupted, arching one perfect eyebrow, "because it looks like you're inconveniencing someone who was here before me." Olivia blinked. She knew the woman's face. Adeline Devereux, the artistic director of a major design house. Adeline looked Olivia up and down, not with mockery, but with curiosity. Then she glanced at the assistant behind the desk and said firmly, "She's not on the list." "That's interesting. I'm guessing the list missed a few names then." Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, Adeline turned to her with a smile that could cut glass. "Stay here. Something tells me this evening is about to get interesting." And with that, Adeline vanished into the crowd, her gown fluttering like a warning. Olivia remained where she was, stunned. What had just happened? Why would a woman like Adeline, the queen of edgy luxury and attitude, defend someone like her? Was it a PR stunt, a mistake, or had someone told her something? Before Olivia could process further, her phone buzzed again. Rehan, I'm coming out now. Don't move. And just like that, the air shifted, as if the universe had held its breath, and now was ready to exhale. The hallway buzzed with energy as new guests continued to arrive, welcomed with beaming smiles, firm handshakes, and over-the-top compliments. Olivia, however, stood still, just beside the velvet rope barrier, invisible again, until the automatic glass doors parted with a soft hum, and in walked Rehan Mirza. Not through the red carpet entry, not escorted by publicists or photographers, he came in through the side, flanked by two associates in tailored suits, quiet and efficient. Heads turned instantly. Rehan's presence was not loud, but it was felt. He wore a midnight black suit with a subtle sheen that caught the light, a classic white shirt unbuttoned just enough to exude elegance without arrogance. A silver pin on his lapel, the logo of Heritage Studio, the lead sponsor of this season's Fashion Week. He looked like someone powerful, but more importantly, someone comfortable with power. And right now, all his attention was locked on one person, Olivia. He moved straight toward her, no hesitation, and when he reached her, he gently cupped her cheek. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, surprised by how quickly emotion had risen in her throat. "I think they erased my name from the list," she said, almost as an apology. Rehan's jaw flexed, a subtle tic he had when trying to control his temper. From the check-in table, the assistant looked up, then froze. It was too late. Too many people had seen the interaction. The man who had just greeted half the board of Fashion Week, the investor whose foundation had secured 3 of the week's most prestigious venues, the man behind the money, was standing next to the off-duty librarian they had laughed at. The event coordinator's eyes darted to the security guards. Both of them had stepped back now, hands respectfully clasped. "I'm going to ask once," Rehan said quietly to the assistant. "Why was her name removed from the list?" I'm not sure, sir," she stammered, her entire tone a far cry from the dismissiveness she'd used earlier. It must have been a system error. These things happen during high-profile events." "Do system errors usually come with public humiliation?" he asked, eyes sharp. The woman blinked. Rehan turned to Olivia. "Come with me." He offered his arm and she took it. As they walked past the reception, silence followed them like a wave. The same guests who had dismissed her now stepped aside. Even the woman in the sculptural tulle dress, earlier dripping sarcasm, suddenly became fascinated by her clutch. They reached the inner VIP lounge, and standing near the entrance, waiting with a glass of champagne and a mischievous smile, was Adeline Devereaux. "I told them you were the real guest of honor," she said to Olivia with a wink. "But no one listens until the man in the suit shows up." Rehan laughed, genuinely. "Adeline, you remain the only person in fashion who's never needed an introduction." Adeline leaned closer to Olivia. "I saw how they treated you. Honestly, you handled it with more grace than I would have." Olivia smiled, a little overwhelmed. "I've spent years watching rooms like this one decide who matters," she said. "It's always fascinating how quickly they change their minds." Rehan turned to the private event coordinator standing at the back of the room, the one in charge of seating arrangements. "Change of plans," he said. "Put her name not on the guest list, but on the board of patrons." The woman blinked. She helped fund this. She helped build the charity. She helped design the launch runway concept 6 months ago. He looked at Olivia. "And she will no longer be waiting at the door of anything I'm involved in." The coordinator nodded frantically. From behind them, one of the designers who had earlier made a snide comment approached nervously. "Mr. Mirza," he said. I didn't realize—" Rehan cut him off with a glance, then turned to Olivia. "You hungry?" She smiled. "Famished." And together they walked into the heart of Fashion Week, not as background figures, not as invisible guests, but as owners of the room. The air inside the grand venue shifted noticeably. As Olivia and Rehan stepped deeper into the VIP section, all previous whispers turned into a quiet, watchful reverence. Conversations softened, postures straightened. Suddenly, everyone remembered how to smile politely. The irony? These same people had snickered only moments ago. Now they were calculating. Who was she? How did they not know her? A staff member quickly ushered them to their newly assigned seating, not in the second row like most investors, but in the front row, center, the only seats with gold tags and their names embossed in cursive. Olivia sat with measured grace, legs crossed, her posture straight. She no longer had to prove anything. Rehan sat beside her, expression calm but unreadable. His presence was not about revenge. It was about balance, quiet correction, dignified assertion. Just then, the lights dimmed. The runway glowed. The show began. As the models emerged, tall, radiant, cloaked in silk and sequins, Olivia's eyes moved to one particular look, a gown she had helped conceptualize during a charity initiative for underrepresented designers. It was inspired by her sketches, based on a childhood memory of the desert sky in Morocco, deep blue with streaks of gold. Backstage, her design had been credited anonymously, but now, on the largest runway of Fashion Week, the spotlight shone directly on it. Adeline Devereaux, sitting a few seats away, clapped first, loudly, and then leaned toward Olivia, her voice low but deliberate. "They wouldn't even hang that dress properly without your sketchbook. You know that, right?" Olivia smiled faintly. "They know now." As the show ended, applause erupted. And then, a final surprise. The MC walked on stage holding a silver envelope. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have one final announcement before tonight's gala auction begins." She paused. "The Heritage Foundation, this season's lead benefactor, has just made an extraordinary decision." Everyone leaned in. The foundation will double its previously announced donation, bringing the total to $10 million in support of fashion equity, design scholarships, and ethical labor initiatives worldwide. Gasps spread across the room. The announcement was made by Mr. Rehan Mirza and his wife. She smiled, making sure to emphasize the word. Mrs. Olivia Mirza, co-founder of the Stella Rising Initiative and co-designer of tonight's signature runway piece. The crowd froze, eyes widened, cameras clicked in unison, and for the first time that evening, no one laughed. Instead, they clapped, awkwardly at first, then with growing intensity. Even those who had mocked her earlier, especially those, now tried to mask their shame with applause. The stylist who had called her housekeeping clapped so hard her rings rattled. The boutique rep who had looked past her now smiled so wide it bordered on painful. Poetic justice had arrived, not in fury, but in clarity. Backstage, the security guards who had escorted her out earlier peeked in. One of them nudged the other. "Bro, that's his wife," he whispered. "You think we're getting fired?" The other murmured. "No," the first one replied, watching Rehan's calm demeanor. "Worse, we're probably going to have to attend a workshop or something." Back in the lounge, Olivia and Rehan stood to mingle. One by one, the same designers and sponsors who had once ignored her now approached with reverence. "Mrs. Mirza, it's truly an honor. May I say, your vision shaped this week's tone in a way we didn't anticipate. You're an inspiration to young women everywhere." And Olivia, ever composed, responded with the same grace they had denied her earlier. "No need to apologize," she told one flustered PR rep. "I've forgotten worse nights. This one will end beautifully." Rehan looked at her, his expression unreadable but eyes warm with pride. "You handled all of this better than I did," he whispered. She raised an eyebrow. "Are you kidding? You tripled the donation," he chuckled. "Only because I could not physically throw anyone off the runway." They laughed, their earlier tension now melting into quiet vindication. And then Olivia noticed something. The woman who had first mocked her shoes, the one who had scoffed at her purse, was now staring silently from across the room. Their eyes met, and Olivia did not look away. She smiled, not with malice, not with triumph, but with a kind of composure that only comes from knowing who you are, with or without a front row seat. Later that evening, long after the runway lights dimmed and the final flashes faded, Olivia stood alone on the rooftop terrace of the venue. Below, Paris shimmered, the Seine glowing like silk under moonlight, and distant laughter drifting from cafes and candlelit windows. The after-party buzzed in the background, but she needed a moment. Just one. She leaned against the balcony railing, the crisp evening air brushing her cheeks. In her hand was a glass of sparkling water, untouched. In her mind, memories she had not allowed herself to fully feel yet. The humiliation, the whispering, the laughter, and then, Rehan, not coming to her rescue, no. He did not save her. He stood with her, affirmed what she already knew, that she did not need validation from velvet ropes or designer name tags. Her worth was not up for approval. "You always vanish at the end of big nights," came his voice gently from behind. She smiled as he joined her. "Only when they start with me being erased from the guest list." Rehan exhaled softly. "I will never forgive them for that." She turned to him. "You do not have to. I already did." He studied her in the quiet. "Even after all that?" She shrugged. "I have lived too much of my life trying to fit in rooms that were not built for me. Tonight reminded me, I do not need to ask for space. I can build my own table." Rehan slipped his hand into hers. "So what's next?" Olivia looked out over the city. "I want to launch that mentorship program we talked about. For girls who feel invisible in places like this. For the quiet ones with wild ideas." She glanced at him. "And no more anonymous co-designer credit?" He smiled. "No more." They stood in silence for a while, just the two of them, a team. From behind, Adeline joined with a soft laugh. "You two make it very hard for the rest of us to pretend love is not real." Olivia grinned. "We just don't argue on the rooftop." Adeline clinked her champagne glass to Olivia's water. "To your future, and to every guest list that underestimated you." Later, as they descended the stairs to leave the venue, the staff who had dismissed her earlier stood lined near the exit, a quiet gesture of respect. Some bowed their heads. Others offered soft smiles. The event coordinator apologized in whispers, but Olivia only offered a polite nod. She was not there to punish. She was there to change the story. As she stepped into the sleek black car waiting outside, Rehan held the door for her like he always had. Not because she needed him to, but because he chose to. They sat side by side in the back seat. The city lights passed in golden streaks outside the window. Olivia looked down at her phone. Dozens of texts, hundreds of new social media tags, even a message from a young designer she had mentored last year. "I saw you on the runway tonight. That was you, right? You have no idea how much that meant to me. They saw you, which means maybe they'll see us too someday." She closed the message with tears welling in her eyes. It had all been worth it. Not for the applause, not for the fashion blogs now calling her the face of quiet luxury, but for the girl on the other side of that message. For every woman ever asked to step aside, every woman erased from a list or a room or a memory simply because she looked too simple. As the car pulled away, the venue disappeared into the night, still full of chatter, light, and people making deals over glittering flutes. But Olivia? She had already moved beyond it, because she understood now. She did not need Fashion Week to see her. She saw herself, and the world would just have to catch up. Close out optional YouTube outro style paragraph. Have you ever felt like Olivia, judged before you even spoke, overlooked in rooms where you deserved a seat? Let us know in the comments. Your story matters. And if this video moved you, subscribe for more stories that prove power does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears a quiet smile. Until next time, stay seen.